Listen to the sound of footsteps in the dark, to voices that may not be quite human, to the sound of screams in the night. The Haunted Cabaret, the home of all things horror, on Rhode-IslandFreeRadio.org, with your host, George Corner. The Haunted Cabaret starts now.
That's ME262 by Blue Oyster Cult off their Secret Treaties album to kick off this week's edition of the Haunted Cabaret here on Rhode Island Free Radio. We won't dwell on politics. I'll just say that, that song about the Third Reich and its military accomplishments is dedicated to all those leftists banging their heads and scratching like zombies against the marble and stone walls of the Supreme Court this past week. Truth is not stranger than fiction, actually. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert to a more primordial type and actually just a couple of things. One is Stephen, when does being inspired by another writer's or creative person's ideas become ripping off in the true sense of the word? Because I just had the disturbing experience recently, this past week, of reading a story that makes me say that Stephen King sometimes in the past has come dangerously close to plagiarism. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Actually, maybe we'll talk about that right now because that's first on my mind. Yeah, and especially because it involves his novel Christine, which, as some of my listeners know, who are also fans of Tony Jones and the Cretin 3, inspired a hit song in one of my favorite Stephen King written word projects.
Which also gets quite a few plays this time of year.
Still, right?
Not to compare us too much to the legendary Bobby Boris Pickett, but we have a handful of songs that kind of come full circle every October.
Well, I know. I thought Christine climbed the European alternative charts during plain old non-Halloween time, right? So any kick it gets from Halloween is extra. The point being that, a work by a man who inspired me to write a very successful single for our band is, I don't want to call him a thief. I mean, people are calling him a ghostwriter now, right? I mean, and I struggled against that. I opposed it for a long time. I said, maybe he's just trying a different style, but nah, he's using ghostwriters now. I don't think there's any question about that, especially because the stories really suck.
The most jarring one was that cell phone one, right?
It started to be the most jarring one until a few other ones came along.
I got that when it first came out, all excited, and not so much.
That was awful.
Yeah,
that was terrible. I mean, the first thing is that Stephen King can't write science fiction, mostly because he doesn't know anything about science. And then he'll mention on the forwards to his books that, I talked to such and such a scientist. Like in the Tommyknockers, he talked to Stephen Jay Gould about what he calls dumb intelligence. The idea that just because you can travel through space doesn't make you intelligent in any meaningful way. You just have to be good with gadgets.
Yeah.
So he does apparently consult with scientists in the field involving the story that he's working on, but it doesn't usually work. And Cell is a good example. I mean, if I remember, I don't remember much about the plot because it sucked. But and by the way, I'm not just going to kick on. Now that Stephen King is old and going blind and senile, I'm not just going to kick him for no good reason, like a wounded cat, down the alleyway. There's still some things he's written and produced that I love this stuff. So, but yeah, Cell would have been a good story if it had a supernatural origin. Tony, I think that's the problem with Cell. I mean, he tried this convoluted, complicated, implausible, scientific explanation. Just don't do that. Just take the Clive Barker strategy of, okay, here's what's going on. We're not explaining to you why. This is just what's happening.
Yeah, this is the point where you jumped in the story.
Right. And just leave out the backstory, leave out the scientific theories if you really can't handle it. Yeah, Cell might have been better then. Not great, but better. But like I say, the thing that really shook me up this week is I read a story by a fellow named Keith Roberts. He's an Englishman, and he published this story. I did check the credits in the book where the story appeared, and it was a collection of his work And the original story appeared in a magazine 1960, I want to say 64, 67. Anyway, Christine came out in the late 70s. Right? It was 78, 79, I think. Like right in that. So Stephen, so this fella, Keith Roberts, had a story in one of the science fiction magazines called The Scarlet Lady. And he got the drop on Stephen King by several years with the theme of a killer car. Okay. And you say, okay, well, fine, killer car. I mean, there's been others. But no, this was, the car was red. It was a classic vehicle. It was set in England, of course. It wasn't a Chevrolet. It wasn't from General Motors. It was an English make and model, but it was red. A former serviceman was the one who commissioned it from the factory as a special deal. Special color, special options. It was a one-off special commissioned by a former military man, and it rolled off the assembly line, and ever since it rolled off the assembly line, it just kind of seemed to kill a lot of things. Get into a lot of accidents. A lot of bloodletting happened when the car was around, and every so often it would, just legitimately run over an animal or a person, or sounds familiar to me. And then the original owner died, and it was bought by a fellow who became obsessed with the car, and he excluded his wife and his family and his brother, and nobody could get through to him because he was obsessed with the car. And no matter what happened, no matter who died, no matter how much trouble he got into, no matter how much the car cost him, he was obsessed. And in the end, I mean, I could go into more detail, but then in the end, the car is finally scrapped, and while they're cutting it up at the scrapyard, one of the pieces, cuts the hand of the person telling the story. And so what I mean, the reason I include that little detail is that in the Stephen King story, Christine, the story ends with somebody at the junket saying, a piece of metal, it seemed like it bit me. So in other words, right down to that little detail, we have Christine as almost a carbon copy of the Scarlet Lady. And it's uncredited. Now it's been done. I mean, it's been done in literature in general. It's been done in the horror genre. I mean, Lovecraft was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe and Arthur Machen. I mean, Lovecraft reworked the themes of Poe and Machen, and so on and so on. I mean, Frankenstein has endless. What would you say? The nice word would be, and Dracula, and there's not too many themes in the horror genre, so naturally we're going to use them again and again. But let's not be blatant. And like I say, I don't know if you can. It's not an easy story to find. I mean, I bought it in a special, a trade edition from a specialty bookstore. So it's not. And I guess our buddy Stephen King, that he was counting on the fact that it's not easily obtainable, or although in today's world of social media and Amazon, if anybody wants to compare and decide how much we should damn Stephen King for this, it's called, the author is Keith Roberts, and the name of his collection is, I believe it's Winterwood. I can check up on that, but it's Keith. The author is Keith Roberts. And the story about the car that he wrote is called The Scarlet Lady. So it's The Scarlet Lady by Keith Roberts. Okay? If anybody's interested enough or dislikes or has a hate on for Stephen King enough to want to get some genuine ammunition, to hurl some abuse his way. And I think the time has come. I mean, I don't think his latest book is by Stephen King and Owen King. So I think he's finally credited his youngest son with help. What's the word?
Time.
Yeah, collaboration. Something tells me if I read this newest one with Owen's name on it, the writing style is going to be very similar to books going all the way back to Mr. Mercedes, and that whole that whole suspense genre, that suspense crime genre that he wants to invade. Mr. Mercedes and the other two in that trilogy, and and by the way, he gets extra frowny faces by taking the ending to the third X-Men movie and basically grafting it on to the end of the third novel in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. The psychic villain who's been brained and basically lobotomized by one of the heroes begins to regain his power a little bit, and the indication of it is when a chess piece falls over on the board that it's the end of the third X-Men movie, and you can't get much lower than that. I think the only thing that could bring you much lower than copying and lifting from the third X-Men movie is probably stealing from a movie based on Dean Koontz. I mean, that might be worse. Anyway, but although I criticize on this show, I do not rant. So before I start to get too much more tempted to break that tradition, break the usual moderate, open-minded, reasonable personality that I usually present, let's go back to the music. And, so I can get my mind off that thieving asshole. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Let's do some Electric Frankenstein. Final Damnation, which I have not yet pronounced on Stephen King because I'm still, because of a fondness all my life. But anyway, I'm getting close. Final Damnation here on the Haunted Cabaret on Rhode Island Free Radio. That was Electric Frankenstein Final Damnation. And this is the Haunted Cabaret. And I think the subject for this week's show has evolved into the subject of Stephen King. Yeah, I know I mentioned that I originally started with just criticizing him for, that, similarity between one of his stories and one that I just read recently.
But if you think about it, in the pre-internet age when Christine came out, very slim chance of anybody finding the book that he copied, right?
Well, that's what I touched on.
Yeah.
Right, when, like I said, the author is more, he's known only to the most hardcore of fanatics. The book, I believe, only had an English release, and very, very slim chance, which means that's why I'm going to damn Stephen King a little more, because he had to know that too. It's not like, he read, say, a book, I don't know, a story by Lovecraft or a story by, Ira Levin. In other words, one of the, a well-known horror author on this side of the Atlantic, and said, oh, you know what, that's a good idea. Let me put my spin on it. Kind of like when, he wrote Salem's Lot and he acknowledged, okay, this is a twist on Dracula. I'm taking Dracula out of England and London and putting him in a small town, in New England. So, in other words, that was an acknowledgement. But this is slightly different. Yeah, I think that's a little more insidious.
I think you're going to see that pretty much everywhere you go. No matter what it is, whether it's comedians, whether it's writers, whether it's performers, everyone is going to take something from someone else and try to make it their own.
Right.
Now, if you go by the way of the comedians and what have you, someone who is very popular, Carlos Mencia, has been accused of, we have no proof that this is actually what happened, but Carlos Mencia has been accused of going to comedy clubs.
And ripping off material.
Ripping off material.
Actually,
a relatively unknown person.
In some stand-up circles, he's referred to as Carlos Mencia.
Exactly. Now, Joe Rogan, who I do happen to follow quite a bit because of his unique take on a lot of subjects, he like spearheaded this assault again, not physical,
right, but verbal assault.
Verbal assault against Carlos Mencia because of the same thing you're talking about.
He resented it. In other words,
exactly. Because here's these up and coming comedians who really have good material, but now they can't do their own set because you have the more popular comedian stealing it.
Person with more exposure.
Right.
Exactly. I have more exposure. It's mine, not yours.
Right. Two things on that. We got your point taken. One thing is that when I criticized Stephen King's Christine, comparing it with this story by Roberts, The Scarlet Lady, like I say, I'm very clear on the fact that it's not the theme, it's not the idea, it's not even the plot, but it's incident by incident. In other words, similarity of characters, similarity of details. It's the details that bother me.
Yeah.
When that wasn't an accident. In other words, when one story ends with one of the characters in the story being hurt, disassembling the car at the end, and then in Christine, somebody being hurt, disassembling the car at the end. Yeah. I mean, and even getting his hand cut. It was that close. It was. That's we're talking about detail here. And the other thing, as far as the comedians, it's not quite the same thing because, like you said, it's the famous comedian stealing from the up and comers. Written stories and recorded, music. I don't think it's quite the same thing, only because the story is the story already.
Yeah.
And in other words, it's not. This situation is not going to prevent another author like Keith Roberts from writing another story. In other words, the story's in the books, so to speak. He's saying what you're talking about is a little more offensive because he's stealing material and depriving people of the opportunity to use their own material.
Exactly. But on the same side of the coin, Stephen King has a lot more exposure than this author you're speaking of.
Right.
So now, unless there's a copyright date to prove when each book was, which there is. But if it wasn't for that copyright date, Stephen King could say, I came up with it first. I just refined it while you posted up what you already read of my stuff.
Right.
So I mean, if he was that conniving to plagiarize an entire book,
Yeah.
telling someone else that, hey, you stole it from me, I didn't steal it from you, isn't that far out
Yeah.
of the
Just
well.
becomes he said, she said.
Exactly. And who's going to win in the votes popular?
And not only not only the popular arena, but financially.
Yeah.
I mean, this fellow in England. I mean, he's a well-regarded author among his own circle, but it's a small circle. So, I mean, I can see why he wouldn't bother trying to challenge Stephen King in court. Plus the fact that there are significant differences too in the story. Like, for example, instead of a bunch of grown-ups, Christine involves high school kids. I mean, they're obvious changes. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to do it, but there are. In other words, he could argue.
Could, but it's that knee-jerk reaction that every high school and college student that plagiarizes out of an encyclopedia and thinks they're going to get away with it by changing a few words here or there. It's just like changing a few details. Changing the age of a character in a book is as simple as an eraser and a pen and a pencil.
Right.
You can change whatever age you want. It could have happened as senior citizens, seniors.
Right. although changing the age does
Christine, the rascal power chair.
although changing the age does imply changes in the character's behavior, changes in the course of the story. So it's not quite as simple as just changing the number. I mean, it does lead to different behavior. It does lead to it should anyway.
It should.
I mean, now if you change.
Look in this room. We have a rather diverse age group here. Really, we act pretty much the same because we have pretty much the same mentality.
True.
So if one of us ends up in a nursing home, it's not going to end up any better or any worse because we would all do the same crap.
True, and actually, and like I said, that is actually, now that is the cause of one of the similarities in these two stories that's under discussion, because a middle-aged car nut acts pretty much the same as an 18-year-old car nut when it comes to falling in love with an automobile and the obsession with
Yeah,
it.
just ask that guy we met at the con.
Oh, him and his reconstructed Christine from various parts from the movie, that wouldn't let us sit in it.
That's the one that the political figure almost dropped a sign on.
Yeah.
Right.
I watched it happen, and I was just waiting for the fireworks because that would have been beautiful.
Oh, yeah. He would have lost it.
He would have killed somebody.
When you could see absolute flawless paint, and he's got ropes set up like 5 feet away from it, and that sign, I don't know how it went sailing. It was the power of the magic bush or whatever it was that threw that sign. He almost crapped himself.
He was even wiping down the car with a chamois between
Because of the
customers.
stale air that was circulated by the passage
Yeah.
of the sign.
All day he was wiping that thing down.
Yep. Well, since he ruined our potential photo shoot in the car, and he I would say he destroyed a potential childhood memory for me, but mentally, a mental immature memory for me. I mean, I wasn't exactly in years. Again, changing the age, right? The easiest thing in the world to do. I could tell this story. Oh yeah, I was 12 years old when I was at the convention, and he was mean to me, and and it doesn't matter that I was actually maybe a couple of multiples over that, but point taken. Yeah. Now since this happened. Well, before it happened, I noticed a couple of things. But since this happened, I've really started to pay attention. I mean, there may be a blog in this. There may be an article in this. Because now my detective eye and my cynical attitude has caused me to scrutinize other Stephen King works and say, where have I read this before? And why does this ring a bell somewhere else? And I haven't come up with such an egregious example yet, but I have, and actually this would probably be of interest to Stephen King fans, like where he got the inspiration, or he got the idea for some of his other famous moments in his stories. What he usually does, that I've discovered more and more, and ongoing, is that it's not. He doesn't usually redo a story like the one we're talking about here with Christine. Usually, what he does, it's more like a collage, where he takes a scene from one horror story, one other author's horror story, a scene from another. So one of his books could have it's almost like a collage, a compilation. Oh, Stephen King was almost doing written rap, sampling, potpourri. Yeah, in other words, the same reason that the old hip hop rap artists, I guess we called them rap back then rather than hip hop, when they were doing almost exclusive sampling, for their backgrounds to their rhymes. This is what Stephen King reminds me of more than anything. I mean, Christine and this story aside, like the Tommyknockers, The Shining, those are the best examples I've come up with so far. Yeah, he samples. He's from scene to scene.
He is the Vanilla Ice of the written word.
Apparently.
Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, I mean, just and now I know that there's some geeks like myself out there that are saying, okay, you just told us that, now give us an example so we can go look too. And I'm not.
Make them do the work for once.
You think?
I think so. I mean, you can.
Should I help by mentioning the name of the author they should look towards?
Sure.
I mean, I think you don't want to just send people out there.
Yeah, there's millions of books. You want
Right, and Stephen King was and Stephen King, to his credit, was an omnivorous reader. Was and is an omnivorous reader and a fanatical reader in the horror genre. Yeah. So I mean, he's probably read more books than like a few dozen of us put together. Mm-hmm. So I can't just say, he sampled from horror novels or horror short stories. I feel my conscience tells me lend a little guidance.
Well, the other part that you could be looking at, especially in a case where the person is such a voracious reader as Stephen King, maybe things are popping in his head and he doesn't realize it's from the book that he read
like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
from the time he wrote his book. I gave that the benefit of a doubt up until now. I really did, mostly because I'm more into creative. My creative side is more into music than the written word, but I do like to write short stories every so often, and it happened to me. I mean, I've read over my own work and found a couple. Yeah, absolutely. And you say, "Oh shit!" But it's an honest mistake. I mean, you immerse yourself in a scene, in a genre or a artistic expression. Yeah, of course. I mean, the couple of mistakes, and I call them mistakes. I didn't know I did it. It wasn't on purpose. Mine come from my childhood. I mean, we're talking back a few decades, not too many decades, but.
See, I try to block most of that out myself, that whole childhood thing, because it just bad things happen. So skipping ahead to when I'm adult, there are times that something pops into your head and you really can't put your finger on where you know it from.
Right.
And I'm going to pick a really left field example for you.
Okay.
I am that type of a TV watching nerd.
Okay. TV is the same concept.
Well, TV runs. They're constantly. You will run out of ideas with sitcoms.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially. Well, late '80s, early '90s, there was a series called Saved by the Bell.
I never watched it, but I remember it.
So, it's Slater, Spence, whatever. One of the main characters was in a fashion class. It actually was a spin-off called Saved by the Bell: The College Years.
Okay.
In this, one of the main characters was taking a fashion class. Now, one of the other main characters was helping this girl out and helped design a dress
Okay.
for this fashion class. At the end, when this person was supposed to take first place in the fashion class awards or whatever the case it was, one of the benefactors to the college came in that they're donating all their money to
Right.
this fashion class, comes in and says, "That dress that you have on there, I don't know how you came up with it, but that's something that we used to distribute from our store 10 years ago.
Huh.
And it turns out the guy that helped the girl produce this dress, his mother had that dress, and that's why he remembered it.
Sure. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, something that comes up in your past that you can't put your finger on until someone else comes and taps
Right.
on the shoulder and say, hey, this is where that came from.
It happened to me with radio delivery. I listened to Imus in the morning for about 20 years, and a few years ago I listened back to one of my shows, and it's, holy crap, I'm talking like Imus in the morning. It was completely subconscious. It wasn't anything I wanted to rip off. Ripping him off didn't even have anything to do with my genre. It was just a thing that happened.
Yeah, no, I know. In my songwriting, it happened a few times. Luckily, I caught it before anything was recorded. So yeah, it's happened in my songwriting. And but I think the written word and music and the written word especially is susceptible to it.
Yeah.
Because it does imprint itself. That's when I say from childhood. What I mean is as a teenager, reading Lovecraft stories, or saying or reading Stephen King stories or whatever. I think I'll tell you from experience, that this honest mistake is happening when, let's say, you're working on a song, you're working on a story, you're working on a piece of art, a painting, whatever it is. Question yourself when it's coming too easy. In other words, when you put some thought into it, you're creating your thing there, whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's just, oh yeah, and you go, you feel the story starts telling it. Now sometimes it's just because you're inspired, but sometimes it's because you've tapped one of those little pockets of buried memory. It's kind of like hitting a little gold vein of gold, deep in the ground. And yeah, that's like I say, it's not foolproof, but I've caught myself a few times, writing stories where, when it starts to go really easy, and even more so when you're impressed, wow, this is cool.
Right.
When you're really impressed and it's really flowing,
You're ready to take it to market that day.
yeah, you're ready to hire an agent. Stop. Stop and take a deep
You're
breath.
ready to break your self-publishing contract.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good sign of it. And before I forget, I'll give those two Stephen King clues for his sampling. M.R. James for The Shining. A story, and this one I can't remember the name of it myself, but it's a science fiction story by Theodore Sturgeon for the Tommyknockers. In other words, the initial premise, the initial setting in the Tommyknockers. Yeah. And in the M.R. James, it's almost there's a famous scene in The Shining, the written Shining, which pretty much, if you come across the M.R. James story I'm talking about, you're going to really recognize it. In the Stephen King story, it's the dead woman in the room. It's related to that, and it'll click. You'll say, "Yeah, that's it."
So if you had dual screens and you had one screen and one screen, it would line up?
Pretty close. Pretty close. And the other story that has a big influence on The Shining is it's an old story which you can find in a lot of horror anthologies. It's called The Beckoning Fair One. And it's about a writer who, rents an apartment in an old house, a multi-family house, and basically he gives into the atmosphere of the house. And, read The Beckoning Fair One by Oliver Onions, and then reread The Shining.
Wait, didn't you try that? Didn't you have a showing of Lovecraft's apartment on Benefit Street?
If I thought it would make me write as creatively as Lovecraft, I would break into Lovecraft's apartment on Benefit
It would
Street.
also turn you into a shut-in.
Well, for a few years. If it took a few years to master a writing style that would get me, I don't know. I mean, do I really want to form a cult of idiots like the Cthulhu cult?
And now with Lovecraft's popularity, they don't even advertise that apartment was related to Lovecraft because they don't want too much traffic.
Well, Well, yeah, at first it was, well, there's a couple of houses in question with Lovecraft. And, if I know we just jumped off Stephen King on, we just changed the topic completely, but that's Tony Jones's fault. And I don't care if we do it anyway because it's, the show sometimes does that. When you talk about Lovecraft's apartments or his houses, there's actually three. The apartment that would, in question would be 1012 Barnes Street up on the east side. And that's where it's actually an apartment. I believe it's a three or four apartment house. And that's the apartment where Lovecraft lived after he came back. He got divorced and came back from New York City, and he moved back to Providence. And that's where we wrote
leaving his wife in New York City, by the way.
Well, I know. I think his wife by then had gone out to Chicago or someplace like that. That was one of the big reasons they got divorced, is because they just weren't happy in the same setting.
Wherever she was going, he wasn't.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, the problem. Talk about going from subject to see what he's doing. Ed, you're a witness to this, aren't you?
I am fully a party with it too.
The only problem is I'm willing to follow it.
Of course, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
Because he's taunting us with that whole he's happy where his wife isn't story.
Right.
We are married. He's not. So he's trying to play like, come to the dark side. We have cookies.
Right. Except that he's married and everything but name.
True. And financial reasoning, so that helps.
Yeah. I mean, and we may be married. Tony may technically be single, but Tony also lives in Wickford. Global warming
Lovecraft
is
used to visit.
Global warming is
True.
Yeah, he was soon to be a victim of global warming if that particular
Absolutely.
storyline is true.
There's a lot of cheap real estate in Wickford right now because it's all going to be waterfront / underwater property in the next 10 years.
Now, granted, Tony had the foresight to rent an apartment that's above a kayak rental agency. So
He will be able to get out. Not to mention, he could throw a rock from his house, if I'm not mistaken. Just on the other side of the bridge, there's actually a marina, so there's plenty of boats for him.
There is.
Plus, I have a air mattress in the house, so if all else fails, I'll blow that thing up and go floating.
yeah, well, if all else fails, I mean, there are some very wonderfully athletic.
I want video of him blowing up the air mattress. Because if he's going to do it with anything other than a pump, he's going to die long before the water actually gets to the front doorstep.
I'm going to blow it up with a trip to Taco Bell
Or
Chipotle.
Yeah. So what was the original point? I think the original
You
point
renting Lovecraft's apartment to
Motivate your
right.
to motivate my writing, and if that would work, I would do it.
Sure.
If that would work, I wouldn't rent it. I'd just kind of squat,
Squat in the front bushes.
Yeah, squat in the basement. Find a crawl space.
So wait,
Yeah.
if that was actually possible, what about all these people that go to Lizzie Borden's bed and breakfast for vacation?
Our axe murders up.
Do you want to go home and axe murder someone?
So I'm beginning to.
See, do I want to? Will I? Probably
Right.
not.
Right. Of course. Now, see, we're getting a profile of our producer, Mr. Jones, here, unwillingly, I think. First, a criticism of, let's just say, cohabitation, and
Cohabitation isn't the problem. It's the legal steps towards matrimony.
well, but it still results in cohabitation. I mean, in other words, if I'm saying we're splitting hairs
He
here,
is cohabitating now.
right? But
He doesn't live with someone with the same last name.
you don't have to have the same last name to be married.
This is true.
It is. And how long has Tony? How long have you lived with the same person?
Since 2012.
Yeah, I think in any reasonable court of public opinion,
Well, yeah, he's a married.
he's
That's
married.
right. That reminds me. I'm going to have to live with one of you guys for 6 months to reset my common law.
Okay, and just keep in mind that these
Don't worry. I don't eat much.
that this hair splitting is not going to save you if you try to escape the rise of the ocean.
Wait, hold on. How much money are we talking about?
Good point. I'm glad you interrupted.
No, you can continue. I just try to find out if there's money involved. I could definitely use a raise in my portfolio. I got a couch love seat.
I know that's why I stopped. This is important. Yeah.
It is. No, I'm just trying to work out a financial deal here. There might be an extra zero on my paycheck.
As long,
from here on in.
as long as I don't have to pay by the pound.
Well, I think that any attempt by our Mr. Jones to escape from that household, whether it's by sea and kayak, or whether it's by overland, to one of our basements. I don't know. What do you think the chances are of him actually escaping without receiving like one of those those rocks from the ocean from the bay's bottom that are nice and rounded to the female hand, that
No, I think
impacting the side of his head?
if his intentions were known at time of departure, he wouldn't make it past the parking lot.
Okay, well, I think his intentions would be evident if he tried to escape by kayak and or boat, because all those kayaks and boats are manned by scantily clad, beautiful women.
That, and when he starts packing up his clothes,
Yeah.
she's going to know something's up right off the bat, because
Yeah,
I hear rumors that he's not the housekeeper.
I'm gonna need her to run off a set of laundry before I pack them up.
Tony, I think the only chance you have is to just kind of walk out of the house like, the quintessential husband that goes out to get a pack of cigarettes and just keeps walking.
Never comes back.
and forages on the road for clothes, food, and everything else.
Was it Springsteen wrote a song about it.
He wrote a lot of
Ride and never
came back, right? Yeah, he wrote a lot of songs about that, but one in particular. Yeah, went out for a ride and never came back. Just a hungry heart.
Yeah, everybody's got a hungry heart.
Yeah, his crappiest song, but he makes a point.
Yes.
Yeah.
He also sang the New Jersey state song, which has the word suicide in it twice in the first 3 verses, I think.
The New Jersey State song.
Yeah. Suicide Machines.
Oh, Thunder Road. No, Born to Run. Born to Run, right? Because with suicide machines sprung from cages out on Highway 9, chrome wheel fuel injected and stepping over. But you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, suicide machines, yeah.
So that tells you a lot, too. Not for nothing. If the state song has the word suicide in it, not once, but twice, chances are it may not
chances are it's New Jersey. Because
Might not be too bad of an idea because New Jersey currently has the same per person density as India, if you did not know that.
I didn't.
Think
And
about that for a
this
second.
doesn't even include the people that have died by falling into pools of toxic waste by the roadside, right? Yeah.
Have you driven through like New Jersey for any extent?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
So you know the stink I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, we're big fans of Atlantic City, yeah.
Oh, all right. So yeah, no, I go to New Jersey once a year, every other year I think it is, to hop on a cruise. So I drive through New Jersey, go right to the thing, get on the boat, and hopefully there's enough air purification on the boat to alleviate some of the sinus distress I put myself in.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that really made me glad that, because I like my gambling on occasion. The thing that made me really glad that Foxwood opened a casino closer to home and not in New Jersey back in the day was when I actually flew down to Atlantic City in an airplane. Okay, back when Donald Trump had his Trump Airlines, and so you didn't have to drive to Atlantic City anymore. He made it cheap enough, and there were even honey roasted peanuts on the flight.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and coach. But anyway, the point being that
Unfortunately, all the pilots graduated from Trump University.
and you could fly from Green Airport in Rhode Island right down to
Newark,
right down to the airport.
Yeah.
And being in an airplane, right, you can look down upon New Jersey from about it's a charter flight, so
couple of
1,000 feet. You don't want to look down at New Jersey from a couple of 1,000 feet and then have to drive through it again later. You really don't. Looking down from that airplane, there's no blue water. There's no brown water. Every pond, lake, stream in New Jersey that I flew over in that airplane was a sick Lovecraftian green. And I don't mean that nice green of the ocean seaweed either.
Yeah.
I mean
some disturbing toxic chemical,
Yeah, maybe-
toxic Avenger.
Like
type
somebody's
green.
having a hard time getting their pool going at the beginning of the season, and it's all
Yeah,
green.
if anybody knows what color teal is, that is the color of the lakes and streams and ponds in New Jersey. So, yeah.
I did have a car that was teal.
Okay, then you know.
Yeah.
That's what you see of New Jersey's water source.
See, I try not to really pay it. Follow the dotted lines. Get me to the terminal. Get on the boat.
Right.
After that, I don't have to look out the windows for the next 3 days.
Yeah, no, New Jersey is kind of like after they had that nuclear accident in Russia, when they didn't want to, back in the Soviet Union days, when they didn't want to admit that anything had happened that would endanger life and limb. So they didn't. They kept it out of the papers. But what they did, because too many people were getting sick, while driving in this radioactive contaminated area, was they put up a sign on the highway that said, how did they put it exactly now? Yeah. For the next 20 miles, roll up your windows and drive as fast as the vehicle will go.
Yeah, just get the hell out of the inclusion zone.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how you want to treat New Jersey for all kinds of reasons.
Oh yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not arguing.
No, we're not arguing here. We're warning people.
Yeah.
This is one of my rare.
It's like a PSA.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of our rare public service announcements that you will hear on the Haunted Cabaret.
We should get money from the ad council for this.
We should we should get bribery payoff from New Jersey's powers that be to shut up and just warn people away from getting on airplanes.
Couple of free trips to AC, and I might retract some of my statements.
What's left of it?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Atlantic City is becoming Haunted Cabaret territory by the day. I love it down there more than I ever did.
If you ever want to have a goof or just humor yourself, go onto Google Maps and just go around Atlantic City.
Uh-huh.
The buildings, they literally just go over the streets.
They do.
It's just a tunnel of casino, or the tunnel that you're going through for the road is surrounded by casino on all sides.
Right.
And then you
Right,
get
left, and above.
and
Yeah.
you get 2 streets off of that boardwalk, and you might as well be in Beirut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like going through a dimensional vortex or something in a science fiction story, right? You've gone through the wormhole from one, place, and it's even. I'll tell you, it's even more creepy now because now those 4 of the big casino resorts have closed. So, and like I say, and I don't wish our president any ill will, but since it already happened, one of his Trump's big casinos is on the boardwalk. It fits that description exactly. And what makes it even better is that he tried to take his name off the tower, the Trump,
Yep.
but it's still there in a very faded, ghostly red.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because everything behind the sign that was up didn't fade with the weather.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that just adds so not now, and I'm not telling anybody be like for or against our president. I'm just saying, but after he's gone to his reward, that building with that ghostly hovering sign will be left behind, and that is creepy.
True.
To say nothing of those empty windows. There's something about a big building that's empty. That's not so much an office building like the Superman building in downtown Providence. That's not creepy. Maybe if you're, I don't know, Tony, is it creepy inside?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it's frozen in time to the literal point where there's deposit slips and the area where you'd fill out your deposit slip back in the day.
Okay.
Dated for the day that it closed down. Still sitting out on the counter. The little things on the counter still say the date.
Nice.
And it is people's business cards, people's employee IDs, literally frozen in time.
Nice, but you have to be inside to be creeped out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're out walking around the side and a brick falls and lands on your head.
Right, but I'll tell you, there's something about those abandoned casino resorts, about the hotels.
Yeah,
being
all
empty.
that square footage, and you
Empty.
don't know what.
Yeah.
Well, you hope it's empty.
But echoing with who knows what.
Exactly.
I think the only thing creepier than that is the number of abandoned amusement parks that have been in Rhode Island over the years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. No, I'm not going to tell you because I was going to say, I was going to let our listeners know where one of my favorite spots is to go to be unsettled,
out,
right?
creeped out. No, I'm not going to tell you because I don't want your asses down there.
We tried to get permission to access the abandoned drive-in at one point, but
Well,
they
that-
wanted a large cash payment.
Well, there's more than one abandoned drive-in.
True,
The abandoned
true,
drive-in that. No, you know what, Tony? We didn't try to access the abandoned drive-in. We tried to access that one that's still in operation.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
we wanted it in the off season.
Yeah.
And that's when they tried to
They
gouge
wanted
us.
Doe to open up the
Right.
joint, yeah.
No, we haven't been able to actually locate the owner of the actual abandoned drive-in. To ask the same favor.
Yeah.
Which we should get around to that one of these days.
Trespass.
Actually, speaking of creepy places to get yourself even more creeped out,
West Warwick.
even worse, down in Hope Valley in Rhode Island, Enchanted Forest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I
Clo-
did have permission
closed, right?
to access that at one point.
It's closed.
That's
It's been
the closed
closed
one,
forever.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been closed for a long time. However, we went by there just the other day, and there was a car in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's security guard or
Right.
someone just went in there brazenly and they're just snapping pictures. I don't know what happened.
Right, or if
I wasn't going to stop.
or if a kidnapping victim was dragged out of that car, brought there, dragged out of the car, dragged into the Enchanted Forest, and
Beating on the Humpty Dumpty.
yeah, basically there's pieces of her, in each of the children's attractions. Yeah, I like to think that. Anyway, yeah, and thanks for that little reminiscence about the If there's anything creepier than an abandoned hotel, it's
a
a
child's amusement park.
park. Yeah, not in a regular amusement park because that's the next, but a child's amusement park.
Yeah.
Very much so. The only other thing creepier than everything we've discussed is the speed with which this show went into the rearview mirror this week.
It happens
We're
quick.
done. Yeah, we're done. We don't even have time for a song. Well, half a song, I guess. We're at this point, right, Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just go right to Goat Whore. Yeah, I mean, half a Goat Whore song is better than nothing. And as a matter of fact, just like a little ironic humor, this is we got queued up on the playlist. An End to Nothing. How's that for lame ass irony? You're on the Haunted Cabaret on Rhode Island Free Radio. Nighty night.
Bear the guilt of intimate feats, only to realize it was the moment of unease. Forced upon mankind, like a storm tide twisting inside. Spill this blood of purity from a slavery ascending life. Transfixed on this task, revive the dead of final breath. Some that curse of madness, wake the rotted blast of the dead. With his dogs of broken glass, staring teeth through raw flesh. Raw fight only stuck complete. Rot soil of eternal sleep. Some of the beatings from rest, eating the ashes of death. Call upon the kings of flame. Let me smell to resurrect. Inhabit the resupply for the decision of this deadly fate. Manifest this chaos.
From Monday to Tuesday, you don't have any fun. From Wednesday to Thursday, just gonna have a run. Friday and Saturday, you're always getting drunk. And Sunday, you stay at home and never go to church.
and gentlemen, that was Echoes of Petra, Slap Your Savior. This is My Night Out Radio, and Tony, why do I not hear... I'm not hearing anything. Did you turn off my... I am? All right. Sorry about that. Little technical difficulties. I wasn't hearing anything coming through the monitor speakers we have in studio. This is DJ Psycho Eddie. We have a relatively full house tonight. We have Mr. Tony Jones, as you just heard. We also have Mr. George Gorner, who is...
Good evening.
He is to my right. Food services just dropped off, so it's the first couple of minutes is going to be a little bit on the quiet side while people catch up with their dining requirements.
Well, how loud or quiet it is will depend on how well the audio picks up the chewing.
Well, I'm going to start off, unfortunately, with more bad news for the Rhode Island music scene. George Jones, 74-year-old from Newport, might not mean anything to you until I tell you what he's actually owns. George was a partner in O'Brien's Pub right on Thames Street in Newport. George just recently passed away at age 74. He passed away peacefully on October 6th. I just found out about this today. So our wishes go out with his family and his wife on his passing. With that being said, I'm going to turn it right around for a little bit of good news. I actually went out and did some research, product research. You may or may not know this. Yesterday was actually my birthday.
Happy birthday.
So I am right where I was back in 1972. Well, on a position of the Earth scale, not really right where I was because I'd be naked and screaming. Again, not that far off, but...
And not in this room.
No.
I thought you were going to say
enough.
getting your ass slapped by someone in a nurse's costume.
Oh, that's weekly. Anyways, there's two places I got to really talk about. Restaurants. First off, for my birthday, it's kind of like a go-to place for me for celebration, just going out with some friends, have a good time. Went to Twin Oaks, Cranston. Now, I'm doing better. As many of you might know, if you've ever seen me, it's not a guess. I'm a little bit on the hefty side. So I've been trying to rein it in a little, but not too much because I'm still going out to eat.
Man's got to eat.
But I went down to Twin Oaks last night, as a matter of fact, and I got the prime rib. But not only to get the prime rib, it was the dinosaur cut.
Yabba dabba doo.
Not only was it the dinosaur cut, but it was the end. So
It was the Brontosaurus dinosaur.
it was absolutely immense. I got 3 meals out of one piece of meat.
It was that piece of dinosaur that flips over Fred Flintstone's car.
I would venture to say bigger than that.
Wow.
Now, my friend that I went out with, it was 2 couples, my wife, his girlfriend, the 4 of us went out. Now, he got the exact same thing I did, barring the vegetable. So I'm looking at my piece of prime rib. I'm looking at his, and I'm noticing mine, being the end cut, is standing almost in ½ inch to an inch taller than his on the plate. It is a full 2-rib piece of prime rib on this plate in front of me. Absolutely delicious, cooked perfectly. A couple of martinis, 3 olives, because you have to have your salad, right? Right. And for dessert, you have to have something. I had tiramisu. Luckily, I escaped without anyone singing happy birthday to me.
Especially the restaurant staff.
Yeah, no, they are not geared for the singing at all. But that was last night. Now, I got to say, about a week ago, it was last Saturday, I went out with my wife. We went up to Cape Cod. And as you're driving around, you lose track of time, you lose track of where you are. And we ended up in Provincetown, which is primarily known for its very free acceptance towards alternate lifestyles.
It's tourist areas.
It is a really good tourist area. Loads of shops, lots of restaurants, a lot of different restaurants. The one I went to is called Kebab-E-licious. Now, we went there for lunch. Didn't have a lot. I had a gyro, however you want to pronounce it. I don't even remember what my wife got, and we split a Mediterranean plate with like olives and hummus and a little bit of tabbouleh, some pita bread. It was really good. And I got to tell you, if you ever want to scare anyone, a member of wait staff especially, ask them for a business card. I feel really bad for the guy. I turn to him. I'm paying the bill because I don't let anyone know who I am, what I'm doing there, aside from eating, obviously.
Just
they
like
know
the
I'm
Phantom
there.
Gourmet.
Exactly. Until I'm done and have paid the check, I will not let anyone know that I will or will not be talking about them. If I'm not talking about them, I just walk out and they don't know. But when I ask for takeout menus and business cards and they start asking questions, that's when I reveal it to them. Well, I didn't realize it, but the person who was serving us was the husband of the owner.
Okay.
I didn't realize this. So he got all nervous. So he's like, "Oh, here's the business card. Here's her direct number. Here's her home number. Here's her cell. Here's the office number. Blah,
Here's our
blah."
measurements.
Well, he was like thinking something went seriously wrong.
Because unfortunately, very few people leave positive reactions to
Exactly.
dining.
So by the time I had left, not only did I talk to him, I talked to his wife. Very nice people, by the way. The name of the place is Kebab-E-licious, right on, the main drag there, Commercial Street. Right on Commercial Street in Provincetown, Massachusetts, right at the end of Cape Cod. It's a really good day trip, a lot of good stores to walk around in. So if you're in the area, don't hesitate to head up. It's a really nice place just to hang out for the day. So those are the two I really had to talk about. And I got to ask you, George, how did food services do this week?
I'll tell you, I'm impressed.
You're impressed.
I'm impressed. Those real mashed potatoes as opposed to the add water mashed potatoes that you pointed out, big
Yeah.
difference maker.
For those of you who listen in on the regular, food services consists of me and my wife. My wife cooked this week. She made a shepherd's pie. And luckily I had a little bit extra at home before I came down.
Although food services last week consisted of Jay Woo, and I got to say, it's awesome to be able to go out to not really a nightclub, but that type environment and order a cup of soup. But you're getting old when instead of a round of beers, we sat down and we each ordered soup. We had a round of soups.
The soup was excellent.
Oh, it's awesome. It actually had me. That was a week ago. I had the wonton soup, which I always get there, and I've been craving wonton soup all week.
Yep, that'll do it.
So you going back tonight?
I think I'm going to try, all the years I've been going to Pagoda Inn, I've never had the wonton soup there, so I think I'm going to get the biggest portion they'll give me, the quart I think they'll do.
I believe Danny's his name.
Yeah.
Danny does have a really good wonton soup as well. I think the broth is a little bit better with JW's Pub, but you're splitting hairs on which one's better.
And whatever Chuckles got, I believe it was some kind of a kimchi soup. He was literally sweating bullets, so it had the desired effect.
Well, it worked. Well, we're going to take a little break here. We'll change gears again. I got a bunch of other stuff I got to talk about. Massachusetts is now actually issuing recreational marijuana sales
Here.
laws, their sales licenses. I spoke with one place in particular, which I'll talk about. It is Halloween season is coming in. There are a lot of haunted yard displays and haunted houses to go to, and I'll talk about one a little bit later on. But again, that's a little bit later on. We're going to take a break here. We're going to leave here with a little bit of Frantic Endeavor. The name of this one is Butterflies. We'll be back in a minute.
So jealous.
right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Times Expired. Name of that one was Chalk Lines. Before that, Frantic Endeavor. Name of that one was Butterflies. Now, the other day I did a live video I posted up about a haunted yard display. This guy, it's his third year. He's gotten a lot of notoriety through local TV stations. We actually talked about him a little bit last year, too. He's got a really good display, too. He's actually gotten a little bit larger. 258 Petticonsett Avenue in Warwick, the Bates Haunted Yard Display. Now, the owner and his family put this on. They actually start building it in August.
That's impressive.
They put a lot of work into it, and it's his front yard and half of the neighbor's front yard. So that's the only way he could expand.
Now, does the neighbor know about this, or is he dead?
The neighbor's his landlord, so yes, he knows about it.
Okay, good. Just
So
checking.
he opened up just this past Friday on the 5th of October. He does Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday and Sunday is 6:30 to 8:30. Friday and Saturday is 6:30 to 9:30. He's doing it throughout the month of October. Please do not go down Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. He leaves that time for his family and repairs if he needs to or whatever he has to do. So it's 4 days a week plus Halloween being on Wednesday. He's going to do it on Halloween as well. Just make sure you get down there and check him out. It's very interesting. Whoever or however he came up with some of these sets or designs, he's got a lot of things going on between his ears that you really just don't want to deal with, I think.
And I was watching your live video, and his setup is as nice as some of the professional haunts that you can go to in this area.
Well, he has been approached by a couple of the larger professional haunts, and he likes doing it for himself. He's not doing it for money. This is a free something to do with the family or what have you. If you have little kids, you might not want to let them in through by themselves because they will freak out. But it's a controlled environment. He does have an eye towards safety as you're walking through. Everything is lit. The walkway itself is 3 to 4 feet wide at all times, so you're not going to get into a pinch point, or you're not going to get into a bottleneck where people are going to crowd up.
Roll a cankle.
Exactly. Wherever he had to run cables, he ran it under, over. He kept it away from the walkways as much as possible. And it's just a really cool setup, and he has spent a fortune on the actual buildings. He has outbuildings in his front yard, 10 foot tall, 10 foot wide outbuildings. And I just can't get over how good this came out for a yard display.
And does he also utilize that for a holiday display, or am I thinking of somebody else?
No. He last year he was a one-off Christmas display as well, but he determined he wasn't going to do Christmas again. So everything that I helped him collect, and he collected on his own and what have you, he is now giving away and donating.
I would say that if I had to pick one or the other, I would also go with Halloween.
Well, a lot of people would. That's why that's what he does. That's what he's into. That's why, he likes it. And I got to say, I every year I've gone to it for 2 years. Well, I've gone through it 2 years. I've seen it 3 years. And he does a hell of a setup.
Right, the important thing being that it's not your typical bats, cobwebs, and tombstones.
No. There's really freaky animals. He's got a horse, almost life-size horse, somewhere incorporated in his display. That's awesome. It's amazing. Plus, what he does with the lighting, it's spooky as hell. So, once again, that's the Bates Haunted Yard Display, 258 Petticonsett Avenue in Warwick, right off Post Road, right down the street from the mall. And George is writing that down as
Yeah, get that at 258.
Petticonsett Avenue in Warwick. The typical Rhode Island landmark I can give you. Do you remember where the Ripta bus went into the building?
Heard about it, but didn't see it.
On Post Road. That was literally at the corner where you turn to go down Petticoncet. And if you're on Post Road and you just turn your head, you can see the display. It's not set back in the neighborhood. He is the first house you come to. The only other thing I got to tell you is when you go there, next door is a couple of buildings, office building. Actually, one of them is a doggy daycare. I strongly suggest you don't park there because the owner, unfortunately, the owner had a little discussion with their insurance company, and the insurance company said, if you let people park there, we're going to drop you. So, needless to say, she can't let people park there. But it's with that, all that being said, it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. As long as you just don't block the road, people can get down the road. And last year, he had a few thousand people come through per week.
Nice.
Yeah, if he was charging, he could make a killing. He's not charging, so please make sure you check him out. What's that?
You said that there was a couple of days when he wishes you wouldn't show up, though.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, then the other 4 days of the week.
The other 4 days of the week after 6:30, come on down. Yeah, that's just because he has two younger kids that he wants to spend time with, his wife and what have you. And I have to respect the guy. He wants to take time with his family, but he also has his family is involved with this passion that he's done. And I've had a chance to talk with him quite extensively, and good guy. So check him out.
Until he goes insane enough doing this to get rid of the family and then open 7 days a week.
Make it part of like display.
Either that
or our minds intertwine.
Either that or this is how he keeps from dicing up the family and putting them on the end of a fishing hook. So,
well, there's no family that can't be improved by taxidermy.
Everybody needs an outlet.
All right, we're going to take a break here. When I come back, we'll be talking about the updates to the Massachusetts marijuana laws. We might have to make this a 2-segment. We'll be back for a minute. We're leaving here with a little bit of Blindside Thunder, Rebel Revolution. We'll be back in a bit.
Far and wide, we're gonna spread the word.
Revolution!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Blindside Thunder, Rebel Revolution. Now, speaking of the revolution, the Green Revolution is passing through the area as we speak. Most notably, Massachusetts, as of July 1st, 2018, recreational dispensaries are legal, but they were not licensed at that point. They're still working on the
Bureaucratic crap.
the full licensure and whatever the deal is. But I did get a chance to talk to one individual. I'm not going to mention any names, but this individual I spoke with works at a local, relatively local dispensary. Now, local as in Massachusetts, not local as in Rhode Island.
That's local enough.
All right. Anyways, first off, I did a lot of research on potguide.com. If you're looking for any information towards, because there are a couple of states now that have legalized recreational marijuana, plus it's hard to find dispensaries because nobody wants to do business with these companies.
With the illegal.
Because of the gray area, because it's legal with the state, not
Illegal
legal
with the federal government.
All right. Then you have all these banks and credit card companies, and even right down to like the companies that rent or sell the credit card machines won't do business with these companies because they're quote unquote illegal.
This might be the perfect opportunity for the proliferation of Bitcoin or some of the other
Absolutely.
cryptos.
Well,
And there's also people out there that don't want to take their advertising dollar, and I just want it to be noted that we will take any advertising dollar here.
Yeah, and you can pay us in the substance involved.
only to be consumed in Massachusetts where it's legal.
Right, we will escort it under guard to Massachusetts.
Exactly. I got a few friends that can leave it at their place as long as, well, we'll leave that alone. Anyways, getting back to the Massachusetts marijuana dispensaries, right now there are probably about 4 that are actually finalizing their licensure to make retail recreational sales of marijuana. One of them being right in Fall River, just a 20, 30-minute ride from Providence. And I spoke with them today on the phone, and I asked them a couple of questions. Most importantly is, what did you actually need to make a purchase there? Cash. Cash is very good.
Mm-hmm.
They don't take credit cards. They don't take any type. If you have a medical card in the state of Rhode Island, it's not valid in Massachusetts.
Well, which is wise for both sides, because you don't want any kind of electronic trail or paper trail.
Exactly.
Right.
But once, and we're only about 60 to 90 days out on their full licensure being finalized. Once it's finalized, they can serve anybody who is 21 plus, or they can serve someone who is under 21, provided they have documentation and a medical card.
Okay, and where do we go to get the counterfeit documentation and medical cards?
Oh, you can get the actual documentation and cards and what have you through the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, but I'm sure not everybody can get them.
Well, you have to be a Massachusetts resident to get
Right,
the
but
Mass card.
how about all of us? Get to the important part. How about everyone in Rhode Island
In Rhode Island, we
that
have to
wants
wait.
to get a Massachusetts card?
Well, I don't know. That's not part of what I was researching.
Right.
What-
This is, by the way, I'm not trying to get Ed to go out of his bounds here. That's just a little hint to whoever in West Warwick wants to go into that particular line of business. That, let's get going.
This would be a great location.
It would.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer, we don't condone the use of illegal substances.
And everything we say is for entertainment purposes only.
Exactly. But, getting back to the actual dispensary itself, the closest one to Rhode Island is right in Fall River. Like I said, William S. Canning Boulevard in Fall River. 999. It's called Northeast Alternatives. I got a map up right now, and there's got to be a good 15 to 20 different dispensaries. 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 right now that are working on their recreational license. The rest of the 16 or so are, the other 20. We'll call it 20. As I keep moving the map around, I'm more and more popping up.
It's growing like a weed.
It's growing like weed. There's 7 right now is total that are working on their recreational license that should all have gone through within the next 60 to 90 days. So by the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, if you are going to be in Massachusetts for any length of time and want to partake, you either have to go to Boston, Taunton, Fall River, or way out in Barrington, Massachusetts, which is right on the New York line. So that's something to look forward to on the green update. And I'm finding it a little disheartening that in 2016 is when they voted to legalize adult use marijuana.
Okay.
It's taken them over 2 years to actually get to the point where people are going to be able to sell recreational marijuana.
Like I say, it doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, they're trying to get the infrastructure in place so that the payouts and kickbacks and all the graft and bureaucratic money changing hands, still maintains a ridiculously bloated law enforcement.
Exactly.
What you've basically done is taken an industry and DMV-ified it. So that's why it's moving so slowly at a
Now,
snail's
my
pace.
question, from someone, and probably from ignorance, from someone who hasn't smoked himself for quite a few years now.
Who was the president the last time you consumed marijuana?
The last time I consumed marijuana is hash marijuana?
I'll defer to the experts on that.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, that would be 1993, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
William Jefferson Clinton.
Yeah, me and Bill.
Who also...
Wait, Bill didn't give you that cigar, did he?
It tasted funny, didn't it? He said it was wet, but
But he didn't inhale.
absolutely not. He just... Okay, go ahead.
No, keep going.
No, actually, my question was this. Now, there's now it's going to be legal.
Yes.
Okay. From somebody who never had any problem getting pretty much anything when it was illegal, do we really care? What is the big deal?
Keeps your ass out of a sling. That's
Yeah, I
about
know,
it.
but nobody ever. We never went to. That's only black people.
Exactly.
White people never went to prison for marijuana or coke or anything
Well,
else.
no, if you're poor and you're white, you're still going to jail.
okay,
Yeah.
so all right, so working class or above,
Right.
would you say is
No, even
immune?
working class will go to jail. If you have
ability
enough
to
money,
buy a lawyer.
Yeah,
Basically, is
yeah.
what the cutoff is.
Okay.
who can you afford for your defense?
Okay, different.
will
okay,
keep you out of jail.
Okay, there's the line: public defender versus hired
Hired
legal
gun.
hired counsel.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that answers my question then. So basically, this legalization is a boon for our minorities and working class.
Yep.
Okay.
But no, you also have a bunch of caveats that go along with it. If you purchase it in Massachusetts, you cannot transport it over state lines.
Okay.
If you have a Rhode Island card, it doesn't work in Massachusetts for your dispensary for your medical marijuana. If you have a Massachusetts medical marijuana card, it does not work in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Even if you're going from Massachusetts, who has recreational, to I think Vermont or Maine, which also has recreational, you can't cross the state lines, even though both states recognize that it's recreational.
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like some poor schmuck trying to get health care.
Yeah.
It honestly does.
Yeah.
It sounds like the same bureaucracy that makes healthcare monopolies in each state is working to establish cannabis monopolies in each state.
So, I mean, the only loophole I could find is if you're in Massachusetts and you're traveling to, let's just say Vermont has it legal. I'm not 100%. I don't have all the stats up for this instance, but let's just say either Vermont or Maine. You drive to the state line. Before you cross that state line, get out of your vehicle, tie your stash to a rock, throw it over the state line.
I was just going to make a sarcastic comment about throwing it over the and
Because then you're just picking up something legal off the side of the road.
see, I was going to suggest that as a joke, but you're right. When you put it like that, it makes perfect sense.
In Massachusetts, they can't fine you for littering because you're throwing it into another state.
Right. and the other state can't.
And the other
find you
state,
from
they could find you for littering, but you're picking it up.
right. So you haven't littered yet.
Exactly. Or you have littered.
You've erased the crime.
You littered, and then you mended your broken ways.
right, kind of opening the gates of heaven to eliminate original sin.
Possibly.
If you want to get profound. Well, that actually
that was a little deep.
that's probably more for when they legalize acid. But
What you're going to see is a whole line of catapults at the border, just waiting for people's stashes to be flung.
is this a new King Richard's Fair? No.
Here at Crazy Tony's Weedapult. Yeah. We can launch your stash attached to a rock in a box over 475 feet.
Why can't we just catapult the stoner and not the stash?
Impact poisoning at the end.
You can let them get high first.
Yeah, as long as he won't feel it. We'll just you just have encase him in like bubble wrap.
That's it. Lots of bubble. One of those big Zorb balls.
Right.
The ones that they roll down the mountain in. You have to hop in the big hole, and then they roll you down the mountain.
Right, okay.
Well, instead of rolling down a mountain,
Catapult
just
you
launch them
over
out
the
into
state
air.
line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you would be if you have your stash in your pocket, then you're
Transporting it because the big ball counts as a transportation device.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to be. Yeah, this is
Dude,
gonna.
there are lots of caveats. I mean, I spent a good portion of time going through all the different laws, bylaws, and what have you, as far as who can, who doesn't qualify, and Massachusetts even goes so far as to explain that they recognize that people under the age of 21 medically need. Some of them medically, as a medication, need marijuana. And they put that caveat in writing that you can be under 21 to purchase it, but you need your medical card.
I think it's almost like the only question is: are they doing all this for each state to maintain its law enforcement complex, or are they doing it, like I said, to establish a monopoly in each state financially?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah, I think that they're doing both. By them, pretty much, I don't want to use the word extortion because that's ugly. But they're forcing them to go through a very long, drawn-out If I wanted a liquor license, if I was approved, they don't give you a provisional license. Right. Then you have to wait for 90 days before you could actually use your license.
Well, it's still a very ugly process, though, because you do have to make a campaign contribution to the.
Well, yeah, you have your own hoops to jump through on a liquor license. But when you're getting to the point with a marijuana license, they kind of got them by the short hairs.
Right.
If you have any type of legal troubles in your background, they can eject you from the system. I want to, not me personally, but someone says, I want to open a store. And that person has whatever financial legal speed bump in their past, they can be told, no, you can't open a store. Even though it's perfectly legal, you can't do it because, you have a criminal background.
Well, that's an axe they hold over the heads of anybody with a criminal background to do plenty of things. I mean, you can't really participate much in the free market society if you have a criminal background.
No, you can't barely get a job.
Right. Although they might be changing that now because they're going to need people to till the marijuana fields.
Most of them are indoors because of...
Till the indoor marijuana fields. Don't destroy my image.
Well, out in California, out Colorado, they do have a lot of outdoor grows. This is Rhode Island.
Now we're in business. Okay.
In Rhode Island, every grow that I've
is indoors. Well, actually, which makes perfect sense to the climate and everything.
Because
like that.
you can regulate your growing season 12 months out of the year.
Naturally.
Indoors.
Right. Although it's expensive as hell. Right.
It's not a cheap proposition. No. But when you have a product like this, people are going to pay that extra for. If you need to sell it for, let's pull a number out of my backside, $150 an ounce or gram or whatever.
Okay.
But it costs you 130, you're only making 20.
Right.
All right, you got to increase your profit margin.
Well,
You
actually,
gotta pay whoever.
Well, actually, one way to increase your profit margin, going back to my high school days experience, is that if you raise the marijuana in your horticulture class's greenhouse and let the security guards, tend it when you're not in school, that works. You can cut down the overhead to almost nothing.
That would work, but then you also, I'm hesitant to do stuff like that, or to even recommend stuff like that.
Yeah, because you got to split it too many ways.
3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Right.
There's always going to be that one person. Hey, I have access to
who wants more than his share to shut his mouth, and then he becomes fertilizer for the crop instead of a tender of it.
There you go.
I'll tell you, another thing that's an obstacle to vast profits in the marijuana industry is that our teenage youth, as always, is ahead of the game. They've figured out, and of course we've had many casualties along the way, that the way to get around this whole business of law and bureaucracy is to get stoned to the bejesus on a drug that nobody's made illegal yet.
True.
So there is a lot of experimenting going on.
Yeah.
Some of it, like I say, not with the best of outcomes. But every so often, our youth can be depended upon to come up with some other substance to get high on that is not government or federally or state regulated.
Hey, when was the last time you built a model?
When was the last time on?
You built a model. You read model airplane glue?
Yeah, dinosaurs.
Model airplane glue was, for the longest time, you couldn't buy it if you were under 18.
Right, the Ramones wrote a song about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you could get high as hell putting a little bit in the bottom of a bag and just huffing it in the bag.
Not to mention, if you go to the pharmacy or the grocery store and you want to buy some NyQuil, you got to prove that you're 18. You know why? Because kids will buy that shit and chug it.
Absolutely. And I think there's some other...
If you buy too much brake cleaner fluid.
Yeah, that's using meth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even the chemical substances, though. I mean, there are other plant... the kids are right now researching other plants.
There are some that come close. One that I'm thinking of is called Kava Kava.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yep. Luckily, I became more mature and responsible and never actually tried it.
Yeah, I never tried it either. But supposedly you get a mild buzz from it. But if I'm going to drink, if I'm going to get screwed up, if I'm looking to get a really good buzz, I'm not going to waste my time drinking something that I have to drink 4 gallons of. I'll just drink martinis.
Right. And that's another factor that goes into the marijuana now is that it's at least 10 times more potent through breeding.
Oh yeah,
than it was back in, let's say, a slightly older person's day. So
people are going to breed it to make it more and more powerful.
Right.
The weed you get today was nothing even close to what it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it worked.
10 years ago, you had to wet it with other substances to make it as potent as it is right now, untouched.
Yeah. Well, 10 years ago, it worked. Now it works really good. Give it another couple of years, and you're just going to
you're going to
have to go to the hospital on a second-hand high.
Right. We're going from stoned to the bejesus in 10 years to effed up really good.
Oh yeah. Well, we have run out of time.
Unfortunately, because this is probably the most entertaining subject we've hit on in quite a while.
In fact, we've had whole shows on this very station where that was the whole subject for the hour.
Yeah, well, it's a very hot button topic, and it's something that whether or not we partake, we believe that it should be legal.
Although I think next time you discuss this topic, it should be reversed. I mean, we should discuss this topic and then the restaurants.
Yeah, I think so. That's
I
usually
you
how
were
it
say
goes.
you bring in samples.
No.
That's how we'll vet the potential sponsors.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to be part of the show, get your word out there, promote something, get your music on the air, hit me up, mynightoutradio@verizon.net, Facebook /mynnightout. Also, don't forget to check me out, Instagram and Snapchat, Twitter, DJ Psycho Eddie. We're going to leave here with the Sugar Cones, Plastic Things. Have a good night, everybody.